the flat earth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, the flat earth to me has always been about the fact the globe earth theory is physically impossible. It's never been about a map, a model, a conceptual idea that has been put forward to replace the physically impossible globe earth. No. The flat earth for this channel has always been highlighting the fact the globe's physically impossible. And in the early days, I used the words flat earth to tickle the algorithm and to highlight the psychological aspects at play when you use those words because of the propaganda and the shady characters attached to the words flat earth. You get all sorts of knee-jerk like reactions from the general public because they couldn't discern and couldn't dissect good information from lies and misrepresentations. That's something the general populace still struggle with to this day. And of course, that's why I stopped using the words flat earth. But basically the words flat earth have always been to me to highlight to the general populace and the good folks that visit this channel on a regular basis that the globe earth theory is physically impossible. But we're going to look at some of the aspects here. Like I say, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll start with the negative stuff and then we'll end with some nice positive stuff. So we'll get with the bad. The bad, you get to see all the psychological aspects of the general public, like I just said, knee-jerk reactions and all sorts of psychological pantomimes, over-the-top performances. And these people don't even realize they're doing it half the time. But again, it's knee-jerk emotional responses to a stimulus, or two words. That because of the propaganda and because of the psychology at play and because the general public aren't given the skill set, like I said, to dissect what's true, what's not. They can't even work out what's physically true and dissect that from what's just a story. They still can't do that even though they can test and verify that for themselves. That is the mess the general public are in because of the psychology, the brainwashing. And it's almost like the general public are under some sort of MK Ultra type program, a very subtle one. That sounds crazy, but the mere fact no one who supports the globe earth theory can cite a physical demonstration. The only thing they can go to is misrepresentations, strawman maps and models to essentially attack an alternative product. But when they're dealing with someone like me, I've never stood by an alternative product. And it just baffles me when you actually bring these people back to center and say, look, I'm not standing by anything other than what's physically true. You literally see these people melt and it just destroy themselves from within as they haven't got the skill set, they haven't got the grey matter to actually digest the situation. Because of biases, emotional attachments, brainwashing and psychology. Because we've been studied, our emotions, our reactions, like I've said many times in the past, those results, those findings of studying the psychology of human behaviour have been used against us and learned to program us in a certain way, essentially defending the silliness that enslaves us. When you break free of it, and the safest, easiest way to break free of all of this is to have no bias. And to do that, remove any emotion from any of this subject matter. The moment you've got emotion in this subject, whether it be an emotional attachment to a map or an online character, soon as you get that, your judgment's going to be clouded in situations, certain situations where that character or that map, model, conceptual idea is being called into question. Your standards, because of the emotional attachment, will be stretched and be allowed to go the other way. Essentially allowing for behaviour that you really shouldn't and wouldn't do normally. That's why I remove emotions from this situation. And it enables me to deal with any of this in a logical fashion. Like I said, not having a bias is rather helpful, I can tell you. But the general public basically result to, basically left with knee-jerk defensive reactions, name-calling, and they do lie and misrepresent. They're so emotionally involved and so detached from what is logically true that they will lie and misrepresent, essentially doing a very good job of what a propagandist or an agent of propaganda would do online. Genius, really, when you actually think about it. I have to tip my hat to the genius of it all. But the skeleton key is removing the emotions and not having a bias. Once you've done that, it's just too easy. The ugly is seeing global representatives getting paid handsome online to lie and misrepresent people like myself, taking full advantage of the propaganda and the misuse of the words flat earth, knowing that they've been loaded by propaganda and shady characters online, and then attaching that and various other things through very crafty wordplay. And as a result, these globe propagandists, well, certain ones who've got big numbers, get paid very handsome. And in some cases, some have got corporate sponsors. Essentially, get corporations are sponsoring them to lie and misrepresent about physical reality when these channels are addressing people like myself, which they do on a very regular basis. Of course, none of them can address the fact that what I stand by is physically true and proves the globe's impossible. No, they always have to have a dishonest approach to the subject, always. And I think they're starting to get found out because of that now. You can only go that far without actually having some kind of physical truth to what you're standing by. After a while, your deceptive games and the deceitful ways start to get shown. The rough edges start to expose themselves. And if they're not attended to and addressed, then people start to see the raw truth for what it is. Nothing wrong with rough edges, but when those rough edges are of a dishonest kind, yeah, then that's not so good, you know. So we've got globe representatives, like I said, getting paid very handsome online to lie and misrepresent people like myself, and have companies paying them to do that. Whether or not, you could debate whether or not those companies are aware of the deceit at play when those certain channels are addressing me or not. You could argue that. But essentially they're paying big, well, I presume quite handsome money to sponsor certain channels who have got a history of lying, misrepresenting me. Then you chuck into the pot all these fake flat earth stroke truth channels. And there's plenty out there, again, using certain keywords to muddy the waters through attachments, visualizations, trigger words. And of course, you've got military involvement as well. Military groups like the 77th Brigade in Britain, which is an online military division to cause just that, division, muddy the waters. And I've always avoided all that by avoiding alternative products, by simply standing by what's physically true. Essentially forcing, when anyone asks to address me, essentially forcing them to expose themselves through one, either non-citation of any physical demonstration, or two, highlighting the angle they're going after me, which is usually trying to defend a ridiculous space video. They're defending something that's physically impossible in the first place, and then they're defending an obvious space theatrical scene. I don't really need to respond to those kind of sillinesses at that kind of silly situation, as the silliness itself speaks for itself. It's just crazy at this point in time. The top globers who get paid handsome sound insane to me at this point in time. The general populace, when discussing this subject, sounds silly. I'm always respectful because I understand the psychology at play here, and I unwrap it in a very subtle manner when I'm having these conversations with individuals in the real world, where people act normally and with respect, myself included. And when you have these conversations, and if you are getting these responses as a result of the propaganda from people, once you dissect and break that down, and then you highlight the easily digestible, demonstrable truth, people get it. It's so easy. That's why there's such a campaign to lie and misrepresent, push alternative products, muddy the waters. That's not to say certain maps aren't true. I don't know if they are or not. I haven't been granted full exploration. But certain maps are used in a propaganda sense with different attachments to those maps to devalue those maps and the demonstrable truth that stands in the background, which is ultimately all we need to stand by anyway. But like I say, that's why we have so much muddy into the waters, online globe reps getting paid handsome, military divisions, fake flat earthers, massive propaganda campaigns, TFE being just one of many that are hoping to get people to doubt physical reality. That's essentially what these propaganda campaigns like the Funnel Experiment are about. They're hoping that you would actually doubt physical reality. Think about the audacity of that. Because of what they say goes on, and maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe the sun does circle. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't change and never will change physical reality. And these people have the audacity to say, based on their observation, that physical reality is wrong. That's why a strong mind is a healthy mind, and a healthy mind comes from having no emotions, no attachments, only to what is physically true, and not having any emotion to any models, any concepts. You start getting emotions, you cloud your judgment, and your game starts to unravel. Stick and keep it simple, okay? That's why I've been set free from any burdens of biases, maps, emotions, and should an emotional situation arise based on a situation online, whether it be content and interaction, I will quickly own the emotions within me through recognition. And as a result, then we'll be able to own the situation logically rather than act in an emotional sense. Okay? Of course, we're on to the good stuff now. Like I just said, I was set free by the understanding and the realization that the globe earth theory was physically impossible. It's like finding the last missing piece of a jigsaw puzzle and completing that jigsaw puzzle, and as a result having a better understanding of not only where we are, but who I actually was. And as a result of that missing piece of the jigsaw, I went deeper within myself to understand myself better. And like I said, as a result of that and being honest with myself, I understood others better. And of course, that missing piece of the jigsaw helped me, enabled it, made it easier for me. I was searching for it for quite some time. And when I found it, it was beautiful. I was set free. I had to battle emotions in the early days of this realization. They were a hindrance to me. They held me back in certain situations. I didn't have a bias, but I had emotion to certain situations that, like I said, like many, held me back. Once I removed, like I said, those emotions from that situation, it became easy. And when you have no bias, you stand by what's true, it becomes easy. And the beautiful thing about this was that understanding and getting to meet like-minded free thinkers who had no shackles, no chains to restrict them. There's some dark corners on YouTube and online, but there's some beautiful people I've come across over the last 10, 11 years, some beautiful minds, some fantastic free thinkers that have taught me more about myself, more about where we are. And like I said, the understanding, the physical, demonstrable truth of this realm set me free, along with the understanding of emotions and having non-bias. If I was to have a bias, it was to what was physically true, and that was all. I truly would love to know where we are, the bigger picture. I sadly doubt in my lifetime we will ever find out. Maybe when I leave this realm, this earth, I get to see, or I get rewarded, or I get a glimpse of the bigger picture, or I go somewhere better, or I certainly understand this place a bit better. I would love to know. It's a curiosity that's always been in my heart and always will be there, unless one day we're granted full exploration and perhaps we could explore this realm like a real adventure, which would be incredible. Be quite dangerous too, but it would be incredible. Imagine it, a real adventure into the unknown, exploring your existence and the physical reality that you find yourself within, a created physical reality. When we look up at the stars and the things in the sky, I don't know what those things are. But I'll never, ever look up at the sky, ever, and doubt what's physically true here on Earth. Never. And no one will ever have the ability to psychologically get me to doubt what's physically true based on anything they say, whether it's true or not. Observations of the sky being a prime example. The good about this subject is I was set free from my emotions, the chains of the education system and mainstream culture. I wasn't chained in big time by those restrictions anyway, but that missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle set me free. Have a good one, everyone.